came out of the womb, started watching wrestling some short time after, I believe. About 15 years later, I decided to start wrestling. So I started training in 2003. I was 15. And I had my first match about a year later when I was 16, and I've been wrestling ever since. It's just always what I wanted to do. I grew up, if you look at, my baby book from when I was little, it's like, Portia wants to be a wrestler, just like Shawn Michaels. That's literally what it says when I was 3 years old. Well, Shawn Michaels, obviously. Owen Hart was a big one. 1, 2, 3 Kid was a big one when I was a kid. And I actually got to wrestle him last year in a tag match, so that was awesome. As I've gotten older, people like Eddie Gilbert, Roddy Piper, Brian Pillman, people like that, Chris Jericho. I really like watching a mix of different things. I love old wrestling from the South and stuff like that, and just different styles.
So tell me about your huge muscles and your ninja awesomeness, and how does that play a factor into your wrestling career?
Well, it makes me a little more awesome. Makes me stand out a little bit. I don't know, I like to work out, so that helps. I don't know, I think it's a big part of what makes me an awesome wrestler, but I don't think it's the only thing that makes me an awesome wrestler. I have some pretty sweet hair that makes me an awesome wrestler. My 3/4 tights also help a lot. I think that people don't appreciate how much Taka Michinoku tights actually add to your wrestling ability. So the huge muscles and the ninja awesomeness, very important parts of what makes me an awesome wrestler.
You team a lot with Nicole Matthews. Why is she a partner of choice?
She's my partner of choice, partially because she's Canadian, partially because she's a ninja, partially because in 2007, I think, when we started teaming, we were the only 2 people on the Shimmer roster who ate French toast platters at Denny's. So that had a lot to do with it. Also, we happened to be in the same airport run the first time she came to Shimmer, and we were waiting for a ride and thought, hey, it would be a good idea if we combined our awesomeness and became one big awesome team, won the Shimmer Tag Team titles, held them for like 8 years. And that's roughly how long we've had them for. And, just became the most awesome force in Shimmer wrestling history.
Now, are you ever concerned that WWE or TNA might not be interested in women's tag teams and that it might prevent you from getting your foot in the door or noticed?
I don't know. Women's teams, they've been used a little bit, but not that much recently. But, Nicole Matthews and I were a good team, but we also wrestle in singles at the same time. I don't think we're like Headhunter 1 and Headhunter 2, where we're together all the time. So, if someone wants to bring us together, that's awesome, but if not, that's cool too. So I don't think it's really an issue.
Now, you've heard all the classic stories of how the top workers in the business broke in by traveling around the country and even the world, small indie shows trying to get noticed and earn their big break. What's it like living that reality?
It's awesome. I've gotten to travel all over the world to wrestle, and 12 countries. It's really cool. When I was little, all I wanted to do is I wanted to be Owen Hart, like I said, and go wrestle in England and go wrestle in Mexico and go wrestle in all these different places, and that's what I've gotten to do. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's the best thing in the world.
What's the level of appreciation as opposed to the way wrestling's perceived here in America?
It's hard to say. Wrestling, it's kind of changed in America since I started. It seems like there's more of an appreciation for it now, but in a different way. But at the same time, it really depends where you are in America. And in a lot of cases, it depends where you are in Canada or in England or in France. You can get different types of wrestling fans in different regions. It just depends what kind of wrestling they've been exposed to. Places like France, we've had shows with 4,000 or 5,000 people. So there definitely seems to be a bigger audience over there. But I don't know. every country has their little pockets of wrestling fans, so they're all different.
You've been considered one of the better female workers out there. Are you selective on what promotions you work for, what promoters you work for, and who you work against?
You know, I try to be a little bit selective of who I work for, but generally, no. You know, I want wrestling to be good, you know, and I want women's wrestling to be good, and you know, some people would probably question who I choose to work for, and so maybe I would question who other people choose to work for, but probably not. I don't know, but you know, I try to make whatever show I'm on or whatever match I'm in as good as I possibly can, and that's all you can really do. I think like there's an incredible pool of talent in women's wrestling. I mean, and not just on the independents. Like on the independents, you have people like Sarah Del Rey, Daisy Hayes, Mercedes Martinez. Those are some of the best women's wrestlers I think ever. I literally think, you know, people like Del Rey and Hayes, I think they're gonna go down as being some of the best female wrestlers ever. And you know, if you go to WWE, you have people like Natty Neidhart. You know, she's awesome over in TNA. You have people who are also awesome. You know, they have Mickie James and everything now. I think that the potential for women's wrestling is limitless. I just think it's a matter of, you know, everyone being on the same page with where they want to go with it. On one hand, there's definitely sort of a growing movement, I think. But on the other hand, if you look at like, you know, All Japan Women from back 80s and 90s, like that was awesome too. And you know, women's wrestling even from before that, like you look at, you know, Fabulous Moolah's era. So it's hard to say. I'm no wrestling historian or anything. I think like I said, there's a tremendous pool of women's talent right now. So if there is any sort of movement, I think it's just that, you know, there's some incredible stuff going on in women's wrestling, and I don't think people can really deny that. So if it is growing in popularity, I think it's because of that. Here's one thing that I think is interesting, because I just flew here today. We're in New Jersey. I don't know if you're telling people this. I just flew here today. People say that there's all these perverts in women's wrestling or who come to women's wrestling shows. I can tell you very honestly, I was hit on more today at the airport than I was at this show today. So I mean, I think women's wrestling gets kind of a bad rap sometimes because there's perverts everywhere, not just in wrestling. Let's be honest here. There's perverts everywhere. I mean, most of the people you meet, probably perverts, okay? So I just ignore it like you do, you know, at the airport, on the street, you know, when random dude starts talking to you, just ignore it, you know? I'm an athlete.
Would you say there were more people today at the airport than there are at the show?
Yes. Yes, there were more people at the airport today than there were at the show.
You've never been hit on by an empty chair?
Well, no. No, I haven't been. But even proportionately, I was hit on by more people at the airport. My main goal is just, you know, when I was a kid, I wasn't like, oh man, I want to be, you know, the top girl in WWE or the top girl in another company. I just wanted to be one of the best wrestlers, and that's all I've ever wanted to be, you know. And I'm very easily distracted, if you didn't notice. So I mean, yeah, I'd love to wrestle on like on an international stage, but at the same time, like my goal always has been and always will be just to be the best wrestler I can.
Would it concern or bother you if WWE or TNA repackaged and discredited everything you've done to this point?
No, I mean, what I've done is part of who I am. Like you can't take that away from me. You can't like change the person I am. I mean, being repackaged, I think, is just something that sometimes happens in wrestling, and you know, something you just gotta roll with, I think.
What's something that you try to incorporate into your matches that distinguishes you from the rest?
Being awesome. Also, the hair. Also, Takamichinoku tights.
Now, if you had one dream match with any worker from the past or the present, who'd that be against?
Okay, I've been trying to get this booked for a while, because it could still be booked. I want a tag match, a mixed tag match. Hear me out here, people. I mean, we could work someone out with like you know, price, promoters, I'm telling you. Me and Miguel Perez versus Sarah and Jimmy Del Rey. I'm just saying, that would be awesome. You could put some other people in there too. I mean, Madison and Billy Two Eagles. Daisy and Michael P.S. Hayes. It's spelled different, but I think they are technically related. I mean, you could have lots of people. Melissa and Arn Anderson. You could do a whole tournament, I think. I've actually pitched this to people, but they think it wouldn't work, but I think it would be good.
Just for the people out there, we want to appreciate your muscles and your guns. Can you just flex for us one more time? Boom! Thank you, Portia.
Thanks.
Thanks for your time.